Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our participants joining the Climate Resilience Pathways, Water Security and Awash in Asia Pacific. We are pleased to welcome almost 200 delegates here in Bangkok and another 200 in Suva. We also welcome an online audience from across the globe. This is Nye Isan from Myanmar, and I'm truly honored to be serving as your Master of Ceremony for this amazing conference. I call myself as an engineer with a heart for humanity, because my passion lies in working with vulnerable communities in remote and conflict-affected areas, helping to bring water and sanitation where it is needed most. Currently, I'm working in United Nations Office for Project Services in my home country, Myanmar, focusing on infrastructure development and humanitarian WASH programs. Climate resilience is a cause very close to my heart. So today's event holds a special meaning for me. It reminds us that no matter where we come from, the challenges we face are urgent and they are shared. So it's truly inspiring to be surrounded by so many amazing change makers and leaders today. And I can't wait for the conversations, the connections, and the ideas we are about to spark together. Now, I'd like to hand over to my co-facilitator in Suva, as Natcha. Over to you, Suva.
Thank you, Nien. So this is Asanada Solinandrotini, pursuing a Bachelor of LLB in USP campus. Already graduated with a Bachelor of Arts on Law and Psychology, and with a complementary of Theology certificate. I'm very passionate about climate change, advocacy, and community resilience and sustainable development, particularly in the Pacific region. I bring experience from volunteer work with NGOs, policy forums, and health, environment, and policy. I am committed to ethical leadership and positive social impact. Lastly, I'm truly honored to be co-facilitating this conference alongside the Union. Thank you. So, Nian, I have a question for you. What are you expecting from this conference?
Wow, it's a wonderful question. Thank you for the question. So I'm really looking forward to connecting with colleagues from across the region and learning about the different solutions being implemented for water and climate resilience. So I have to gain new insights and be inspired by the collective energy here and bring home fresh ideas that I can apply in my work supporting vulnerable communities. I'm also excited to see how we can build stronger collaborations across the region to tackle these shared challenges together. So, dear, would you like to share yours as well?
Nothing different from yours, particularly I'm looking forward to more practical strategies, because I've heard there's a lot of participants here in Fiji that are from related to groundwork relations, and so I'm really excited on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Asnada. I'm excited to be welcoming people to this conference, especially connecting with our partner hub, which I hope give us the chance to talk together about water and climate challenges we are all facing, but also talk in our own sessions about what is happening in our region to address these challenges. So without further ado, now I'd like to introduce Dr. Angela McDonough, Australian Ambassador to Thailand. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Angela McDonough for her opening remarks.
Good morning, Sawatdee Ka, and Bula Vanaka to Fiji. I'd like to acknowledge the Honourable Ro Philippe Tuisawau, Minister for Public Works, Transport and Meteorological Services in the Government of Fiji, Ms Retno Marsudi, Special Envoy of the United Nations Secretary-General on Water, an incredibly important position, Mohammed Nistar Khan, Director of Department of Water and Sewerage, Ministry of Public Works, Meteorological Services and Transport Fiji, who is joining us at the Suva Hub. It's a great pleasure to welcome everyone here on behalf of the Australian Government. Australia is really pleased to be partnering with countries in Asia and across the Pacific to support healthy, climate-resilient and inclusive societies by investing in water resources management and water, sanitation and hygiene services. You all know that water is fundamental to all life on Earth and underpins all human activity, food and energy production, physical health, life in cities, and social stability. The Australian Government has contributed significantly to developing best practice in water security, WASH, and climate. The Water for Women Fund, in particular, has generated many lessons in strengthening the climate resilience and inclusiveness of water security and WASH. We know that climate change is exacerbating both water scarcity and water-related hazards such as floods and extreme weather events. At the same time, nearly half the global population lacks access to safely managed sanitation. About 2.2 billion people around the world don't have access to safe drinking water, and about 3 billion people don't have access to basic hand washing facilities. To successfully address water security, sanitation and hygiene and build climate resilience, we need to be clear about how they connect. Basic water services, including sanitation, are essential for community well-being. And by ensuring that they're climate resilient, we can support communities to remain healthy in the face of ever-increasing climate impacts, preventing waterborne disease and other adverse effects. There's a continuous feedback loop between how we manage water, how people access water, and how we can build resilience to the impacts of climate change. And as with so many things, data is key to understanding this loop. So we've been really pleased as Australia to support projects like the Mekong River Commission's Environment and River Profile Survey, which will provide critical data, including riverine conditions, fish habitats, and the impacts of human activities on the river. There's much we can learn from each other, and so we're pleased to be supporting this conference as an opportunity to share, reflect, and exchange ideas. This Climate Resilience Pathways Conference builds on a strong culture of sharing evidence-based lessons established through past WASH Futures conferences. And it's great that this conference is accessible to so many people, as it's delivered for the first time through 2 regional hubs, here in Bangkok as the Asian Hub and Suva as the Pacific Hub. While there are climate and water issues common across Asia and the Pacific, and indeed globally, the way we tackle these really needs to be appropriate to the local conditions. So I'm really impressed that we've got representatives from 17 countries participating in Suva and 28 countries who are represented here in Bangkok. So thank you all for partnering with Australia on these important issues and for participating today. With that, I warmly welcome you once again and look forward to hearing about the outcomes of your discussions. Thank you.
For the past 7 years, we've been on a journey across 16 Asia-Pacific countries. In this time, we've seen firsthand the devastating impacts of climate change, rising temperatures, drought and floods. But we haven't just watched, we've acted. Together with our partners, we've improved access to water, sanitation and hygiene for over 3.4 million people. Along the way, we've seen how WASH is fundamental for the health and resilience of communities and ecosystems. And we've learned that inclusion and equity are key. When everyone's voices are heard, we build stronger, safer, and more resilient communities. Because real solutions come from those on the front lines, communities facing climate events, civil society, scientists, researchers, and those working to reduce risks and adapt to climate change impacts. This is how we can build a climate resilient future for all. At the end of the day, it all comes back to
air,
ទឹក ខានបាននេះតែសុខានាម័យ
start clean,
Washing dong start clean.
dan kebersihan.
पानी साफ सफाई और स्वच्छता
Sombrang setrai
Untuk anak perempuan.
Semrat borah. Talaga no para.
Genjutsugi dele.
សម្រាប់យុវជន
Long Olgeta.
យើងគ្រប់គ្រង
yang tahan iklim, yang tangguh iklim.
បរិយាបន្ន
Munga.
water for women
water for women air untuk perempuan
น้ำคือแม่หญิง
Para Blongal Mary.
May laki-laki pani
Water for women.
Wara bilang all Mary
water for women may laki-laki pani
this is our message in a bottle. Help spread our message to your shores.
Thank you, Dr. Angela MacDonald, Australian Ambassador to Thailand. Now I'd share a little bit about that video. So that video was a message in a bottle from the Australian government's flagship WASH program, Water for Women. Over the past 7 years, Water for Women has been working with communities on the front lines of climate change to address inequities in access to water supply, sanitation, and hygiene, and strengthening the systems that underpin them. Water for Women completed implementation at the end of 2024 to celebrate their work with partners across Asia-Pacific region who featured in the video to develop this message in the bottle and cast it out to the world, knowing that this impact and the learning will continue to flow far and wide, including here at this conference where many Water for Women partners are leading and co-leading this session. Thank you to the Water for Women team for sharing that video. And I would like to introduce Dr. David Rohindra, the Deputy Head of School for School of Agriculture, Geography, Environment, Ocean, and Natural Science in USP to deliver a speech.
Bula, namaste, and good afternoon to you all. Welcome to the University of the South Pacific at our Lozala campus, where we proudly serve not only our local community, but also our people across the member countries. The theme of this conference aligns closely with USP's vision to shape Pacific futures by empowering students, staff, the alumni to become inspirational agents of positive change, leading to innovative, cohesive, resilient, and sustainable communities. We are all acutely aware of the significant challenges posed by climate change, particularly regarding water security and WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene. These issues are not merely theoretical. They represent the daily realities faced by many of our students, staff, and their families across our member countries and beyond. In the opening remark this morning, the Vice Chancellor and President, Professor Alalo, alongside the Honorable Minister, underscored the crucial role of water for the survival of life on Earth. They pointed out the numerous challenges faced in providing accessible drinking water to the population. In addition to the challenges posed by the climate change on water security, Another looming threat is plastic pollution, particularly through microplastics, whose impact on human health remains uncertain. A recent study here in Fiji, examining various drinking water sources, revealed that treated water from rivers and catchments near human activities was significantly contaminated with microplastics, whereas rainwater was found to be the cleanest. Several regional nations such as Kiribati, Nauru, Tuvalu, along with some rural communities on the main island, rely heavily on rainwater for their survival. This underscores the importance of placing a stronger focus on harnessing rainwater as a sustainable resource. It may be time to re-evaluate and reintegrate traditional methods for its collection and use. USP is deeply honored and proud to co-host the Suva hub of this conference in collaboration with the government of Fiji and the International Water Center. We recognize the importance of our role in disseminating information and insight related to the event. This event would not be possible without the generous financial support from the Australian government through the Water for Women Fund, and we sincerely acknowledge their commitment and presence here today. As we launch our opening plenary, I would like to extend a warm welcome on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and the USP community to all the attendees, including water sector professionals, practitioners, students, researchers, and development partners. I encourage everyone to exchange information and insights, enabling us to learn from one another and elevate water to its rightful status as the vital resource. Wishing you all the very best for the upcoming 3 days, filled with knowledge sharing and networking. Vinaka, Dhanbad, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rohindra from the University of the South Pacific for your welcoming statements. So right now we are pleased now to move to our opening keynote speakers who will share with us their thoughts on why action on water management and wash is critical for resilience and for climate resilient development. So I'm honored to introduce Her Excellency Retno Marsudi, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on Water. The United Nations Secretary General Guterres appointed Ambassador Retno Marsudi as a Special Envoy on Water with the aim of galvanizing partnerships and concerted efforts to advance the water agenda, including the follow-up on the outcomes of the United Nations 2023 Water Conference. The Special Envoy will draw on these outcomes in the lead up to various global water processes, particularly the 2026 UN Water Conference. She will support efforts to ensure a water-secure future for all by advocating for stronger political, economic, and social-cultural cooperation at all levels. The Special Envoy will also aim to enhance international cooperation and synergies among various international water processes in support of the achievement of all water-related global goals and targets, such as the Sustainable Development Goal SDG 6 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thank you, Her Excellency Retno Marsudi.
Very good morning, Bangkok. Good afternoon, Suva, Bula. Your Excellency, Ambassador Angela MacDonald, colleagues, distinguished
participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, of course, thank you very much for having me. I just landed from Jakarta midnight last night, but thanks God that we don't have any time difference. Jakarta, Bangkok is the same time zone, so I don't have jet lag. So I feel so fresh today to share with you about water. And of course, thank you very much for the International Water Centre of the Griffith University and the Government of Australia for organizing this important conference. Colleagues, let me start by presenting some data. Maybe some of you already aware of this data. Asia Pacific has only 30% of the world water resources, and its capita water availability is the lowest in the world. 16 million people in the region still live without access to basic drinking water. Another data, more than 80% of wastewater generated in the region's developing countries is not treated, and wastewater remains an under-tapped resource. Around half of population in Asia and the Pacific has no access to improved sanitation, while its population has more than double. This region is also one of the most disaster-prone in the world, and its economic sector, such as agriculture, energy, are largely dependent on fresh water. All these situations, colleagues, compounded by the impact of climate change, will certainly hamper the achievement of SDGs, especially SDGs 6, if left unaddressed. Then I would like to move on some data on the climate-related issues. Data shows that climate change poses a profound existential threat for the region, with the potential to disrupt decades of progress and burden future generations. A large part of the region economy is dependent on its coastlines, with key sectors such as tourism, fisheries, and trade being concentrated in coastal areas. Asia Pacific is home of 70% of the global population susceptible to sea level rise, and about 1/3 of total employment is in natural resource-based sectors conditioned by climate, such as agriculture and fisheries. This region has 6 of the world's largest coastal mega cities, and this economic dependence on coastal region amplifies the potential impact of coastal hazard on the region's economic and livelihood. In 1922, disasters in the region has accounted for 70% of the internal displacement worldwide that reached 32.6 million internal displacement, and it is 41% higher than the past 10-year average, and most were due to weather-related hazard. Floods alone cost more than $36 billion economic loss. And in 2023, the economic loss increased, surpassing $41.5 billion. So colleagues, why I presented that data? Because from those data, we can see clearly that Asia Pacific region is very much at the receiving line of the impact of climate change. And within this context, this conference becomes very important, an important avenue to discuss about water and climate challenges and how together we can strengthen cooperation to tackle those challenges. How together we tackle those challenges. I would like to underline the word cooperation. I mentioned that we need to cooperate, we need to work together, and I would like to underline the word cooperation because amid so many uncertainties, all of us must stay in the right course to continue strengthening cooperation again and again and again, and opt out the zero-sum approach in all areas related to human life. Dear colleagues, instead of becoming source of prosperity in many parts of Asia Pacific, water remains a persistent challenge worsened by climate change. Water is life, we all know that, and therefore it must be a source of prosperity, not a driver of calamities. Therefore, urgent actions are needed. And facing such a complex condition of climate and water challenges, we must look for a strategic solution. And there are two simple logics on why water plays key role in ensuring climate resilience. Number one, investment in water strengthens climate resilience. When we invest in strong water policies and infrastructure, we protect our development progress from the 90% disaster linked to climate and water-related hazard. Number two, investment in water management will also contribute significantly to the implementation of climate action. Good water management is a practical and effective strategy to reduce carbon emissions across sectors in agriculture, industry, urban systems, and many other sectors. So we kill two birds with one stone. Investment in water tackles challenges in water and in climate change. The critical question now is, how do we make this happen? This is very important because after all the data, also understanding the challenges, the question is always, how do we make this happen? How to solve the problem? Because what we want is, after having a thorough discussion, then action are badly needed because only deeds can change the situation. So, number one, what is very important to do, please prioritize water financing within climate financing. Today, only a small fraction of global climate finance is directed to water-related initiatives. International Water Management Institute highlighted that between 2016 to 2020, only 3% of climate finance was dedicated to water. And it is also found that in 2022, only 15% of climate adaptation financing to low and middle income economies was directed toward water and wastewater sectors. We acknowledge that the impact of climate change are manifested through water. Therefore, within climate financing, we must expand attention and resources toward water. Second, we must harness and promote water innovation as catalyst for climate action. And in this conference, I encourage all of us to share good practices and success stories, how innovations in water sectors are becoming game changer in climate action. How water reuse, recycling, wastewater treatment can reduce greenhouse gas and emission. How water conservation support the critical role of wetland ecosystem as carbon sinks and other innovation. The facilitator mentioned about the preparation for the 2026 UN Water Conference, and the issue of innovation will be one of the topic of discussion. The more we learn from each other, the faster we accelerate action. And finally, we must aim for concrete outcome and follow-ups to this conference. Again, implementation deeds are very important. And this conference is not an end. It is an important checkpoint and heading toward the multiple global opportunities. We must bring forward actionable recommendations and outcomes from our discussion in this conference. So during the 6 months, my role as the special envoy of the UN Secretary General on water, I consistently emphasize on the importance of concrete cooperation. Implement what we discuss, because we understand that, again, as I mentioned, what we discuss in this room, in many rooms across the globe, sometimes there are gaps between what was discussed in the room and then what was materialized at the ground. So try to narrow the gap between commitment and implementation, and that is very important if we want to see the difference or we want to make difference. So the continuation and sustainability of our efforts beyond this conference will be essential. So in this regard, I invite all of you to keep in mind, again, the upcoming global climate and water processes. Number one is the UN Water Conference in 2026. The preparatory process is now going on. Second is the International Conference on Financing for Development next month. No, today is April, right? Okay, so in June, 1 month after next month. And then COP30 next November, and many other key milestones ahead of us. And those are opportunities we must not waste. And of course, this conference is not one to lose. So I do believe, colleagues, that this conference will contribute a lot. How together we can tackle the issue of water and climate challenges. So once again, I thank you very much. By the way, just to inform you, I'm just appointed as the special envoy on the 1st November last year. So I just do my role only for 6 months. And before, I was the foreign minister of Indonesia for 10 years. So looking forward to cooperate with you, to link with you. Once again, thank you very much for having me, Ambassador. Thank you, colleague.
Thank you to Her Excellency Retno Marsudi, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on Water. Now it's my duty to introduce Mary Alalo. Mary is the lead for water security engagement at the Secretariat of the Pacific Community. She also manages the Pacific Resilience Partnership Water Security Technical Working Group. Mary has over 18 years of development experience managing the implementation of programs in the areas of climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, community-driven development, education policy, civil society strengthening, wash and water security engagement. Now, without further ado, I'd request Mary to come and deliver her speech.
Bula, everyone. Warm Pacific greetings from the Pacific Hub in Suva, Fiji to the Bangkok Hub. It is a privilege to deliver the keynote address, and I will focus specifically on water security and Pacific resilience. Before I go to the technical part of my remarks, I would like to acknowledge Her Excellency Retno Marsudi, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on Water. Thank you so much for joining this important conference. And I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Angela, Australian Ambassador to Thailand, and the other esteemed speakers who spoke this afternoon in our part of the world and in the morning part in the Bangkok hub. So I've been asked to reflect on why is action on water management and was critical for resilience. It all boils down to the question, what does water security mean to you? For me, water security is a lifeline. It is connected to all other sectors. It is very critical to achieve all the other sustainable development goals. So when we think about why water security, why is it essential for resilience, it all boils down to what does water mean to you? For women, water is essential for menstrual hygiene. Today we had the Secretary General talk about the economic loss due to the impacts of severe drought. And in our part of the world, and I believe in Asia as well, when we think about flooding, too much water, there's also a lot of economic loss. Next slide, please. Okay, so I would like to say a little bit about the context of the Pacific region. When you look at the Joint Monitoring Program report produced by the World Health Organization and UNICEF, it shows that the Pacific has the world's lowest levels of access to at least basic drinking water services. And when you go to the remote rural communities where I am from, a lot of our remote rural communities have very poor access. Next slide. And when we look at basic sanitation facilities, the Pacific has persistently low levels of access to basic sanitation. And when you compare that with other regions, the Pacific remains very low in terms of its basic access. So this is about basic access we are talking about. It is not about safe access, it is basic access. And so when we look at the Joint Monitoring Program data, it shows that high numbers in the Pacific as a region, we continue to resort to open defecation. And this has a lot of health implications when it comes to children's health and well-being, but also for the food security that we are heavily dependent on. And when we look across other regions, the Pacific is also the world's least urbanized sub-region. And because of that, it shows that when we look at disparities between urban populations and rural populations, there is a very great disparity. So if you look at that in terms of urban population, you can see it from the graph that rural population have very low access. So there's that big disparity between urban and rural population. And if we look at it from a climate change angle, the IPCC 6 report projects that the Pacific will experience low availability of fresh water, or there will be a decline of fresh water due to saltwater intrusion as a result of sea level rise. And there is also a projection of a 50% decline in fresh water for atoll countries who do not have access to surface water. And extreme rainfall events would become more frequent and intense. And there is a 1 in 2 chance of drought conditions increasing in the Pacific. And with higher temperatures, this will lower freshwater ability and increase water stress. So while that is a projection, I would like to highlight that a lot of our countries and communities are already experiencing water scarcity due to increasing temperatures. And over the years, even last year, some of our atoll countries had drought impacting their water access. So why is it then important that we should really ensure that we take action? We've heard from the other speakers that when we think about water, water basically is life. And if we do not secure it, then it compromises our livelihoods, and I would say our existence as well. And I would like also to highlight the scale of the challenge. When we look at water issues, it is both a climate change and disaster resilience issue, requiring both adaptation and mitigation solutions. It is also a development issue that is essential to socio-economic and sustainable development. And I mentioned earlier that it is a connector, it is a lifeline critical to all sectors: food security, health, ecosystems, gender outcomes, energy, tourism, education. And when we think about reaching the thousands of vulnerable rural remote populations, it is very, very essential then that we must address water both as a climate and resilient issue and solution, but also as a development solution. And so this calls for a need of fundamental recalibration of government and partner priorities and investments. Okay, and so if we look at SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation, it is central to achievement of other SDG, like ending poverty, SDG 3, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, SDG 11, 13, and 14. So it is essential to achieving those other SDGs. And when we look at water, it comprises several areas. For example, we have the climate change. We need to look at the resilience of our water resources and systems. We need to look at hydrological services. It is not just about drinking water and sanitation, but it is also about understanding the capacity of our countries in terms of their hydrological services. It is also about ensuring there is clean drinking water for health needs and clean water for sanitation, and also about managing these water-related disasters and the role of water utilities. And when we look at the key actors and players, there are several actors: water utilities who manage urban water, and for countries, I think they both look after urban water and rural water. But then when we look across the other elements of water, like ecosystems, then the role of climate change ministries become very important. And when we look at scaling up investments, then the role of those in planning and financing become important in terms of allocation of funds for water investments. And so what have we done to really ensure that when we address water management, it is taken as a whole? And so the Pacific Water Security Technical Working Group has come up with a specific definition of water security, drawing on the UN water definition. And the definition focuses on the ability of specific communities at all levels to protect and sustainably manage their water resources while maintaining access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene for all, and managing the water-related risk of disasters and climate change to support a healthy, prosperous, and resilient Pacific. So it integrates the health aspects, the economic aspects, and the water resource management aspects as well, and managing water-related disasters. So that is the definition that has been developed to really help us to look at water security in all its elements or components. And one of the work that we've done through the PRP is to develop a Pacifica water security engagement strategy. And the vision of this strategy is that water security is embedded as a cornerstone in regional resilience initiatives and dialogues through championing by a diverse and collaborative community of leaders. And if we look at the Pacific region, it comprises Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia. And these three regions have different water issues. When we look at our Micronesian and Polynesian countries, they are low-lying atolls and islands with no access to surface water. And when we look at our Melanesian region, they have access to surface water, but experience a lot of flooding. And when we look at our atoll countries, they experience a lot of drought. So that is the population of countries and territories with no surface water. And if we are to look at the volcanic countries of the Pacific, like Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, and Vanuatu, there are maritime communities with no access to safe water, to surface water. So this increases the population of communities without access to surface water. Next slide, please. And so I would like to just give a brief intro into rainwater, looking at one case study in Funafuti of Tuvalu, where rainwater is one of the main source of water, main water source. And water is managed at the household level. And so there's storage in different layers. You have household storage, you have government storage, community storage, and when there's a drought, then they have to use other alternative sources of water, such as tapping into the groundwater. And this case, it's from Kiribati. So this is looking into groundwater, accessing potable groundwater. And when there is very low rainfall, then this is the alternative that will be tapped. And this slide looks into groundwater in an atoll environment during normal conditions, where you can see during normal conditions, the freshwater lens is thick and you have your crops, your taro, growing healthy, and you have the shallow water well tapping good fresh water. And if we look at drier conditions, it shows that During drier conditions, when there is continuous pumping, it does impact the freshwater lands. And so you also have the food or agriculture sector impacted during drier conditions, and so less water is available for communities living on atoll islands. Next slide. And so if we go back again to volcanic islands, we see that countries like Fiji, Solomon Islands are prone to floods, and droughts and floods is a continuous issue that the Pacific struggles with. And so this points to the need for more sustainable and resilient approaches to ensure that we have systems or our communities are better prepared to manage water-related disasters. Next slide. And so this comes again to climate resilient development and development without disasters. And this graph points to the fact that when there is no disaster, projected development is very good, but when there's a disaster, then it affects our water access and development gains as well. And so this points to to a lot of the damages and losses during natural disasters, but also points to losses and damage from climate change impacts, and the need to really understand how climate change impacts the water sector, and the need to do research to understand better loss and damages from climate change. Next slide. So this is my beautiful island of Tikopia, where I come from. So I'm from the Solomon Islands, and this is my island. And when I was growing up as a little girl, we experienced category 2 cyclones, but with increasing climate change extremes, our island has experienced category 4, category 5 cyclones, which has really impacted a lot of our very limited water resources. And so I am now 47 years old, and as a little girl, I experienced water scarcity. And when I go home to Solomon Islands, I am so afraid to go back to my island because I love my good access to water. And so I think we must ensure that we reach even the most remote of our communities so that we address the disparities that exist. Because I think it is not good that urban communities access good water and our remote communities are struggling to access water. And then if we look at the other side, geological hazards like earthquakes, volcanoes, these are also hazards that impact our water resources. And so the need to also ensure that we take a whole integrated approach, not just addressing one aspect of it, but we address all the aspects that impact water resources. And so you heard about all the issues, all the challenges. What are we doing about it? And in the Pacific, there are a lot of partners from the national level, sub-national level, NGO, government donors, intergovernmental organizations really working to ensure that a lot of those issues I flagged earlier are addressed. And I would like to share some of the work that is done by the Pacific community. And we have the Pacific Partnership for Atoll Water Security, which is funded by MFAT New Zealand. And this works with our atoll countries to really ensure that we strengthen their water resource management and also access. And earlier today, I mentioned about flooding in volcanic countries. So there's also that support, hydrology support to enhance flood early warning systems in the Pacific, which focus on 4 countries with flood issues: Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, and Samoa. And this is funded by the Australian Water Partnership from funds from DFAT Australia. And so to conclude, because I think I'm starting to make some people feel a bit sleepy. Okay, so this is my final slide. And I would like to look at it from strengthening water security engagement. So what then should we do to ensure that we really take an integrated, holistic approach? And one of the things that or actions that we've taken is to really look at strengthening water security engagement. And one of the platforms we've used is the Pacific Resilience Partnership, which is a mechanism established by Pacific Island Forum leaders to really look at integrated approaches when it comes to climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And so we've developed a Pacific Resilience water security engagement strategy. But what I want to highlight is that when we look at water management, there are two parts that I always like to talk about. One is the hardware, the water infrastructure, and then the other is the software, institutional capacities, behaviors, practices. This must be done together, because if we focus only on the infrastructures, then we don't change the behavior. We don't change the institutional arrangements, and we set us up for failure. So I think the important to really make sure that when we take action, it must be integrated, that we both establish the infrastructure, but we also strengthen the capacity to manage these water infrastructures and manage our water resources. And what are the key recommendations going forward? The need to access climate financing and innovating financing, and the need to really look into loss and damage from climate change, because we need to understand where adaptation ends and where we need to start looking into loss and damage so that from the climate, from climate change impacts. And that is it from me. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Mary Alalo. Now our room is open for any question for the speakers, our two keynote speakers.
So there is a question here. If we could unpack what are some of the innovative finances. So we have a technical expert here, Excellency Taloiburi from the Green Climate Fund. Is he here? If he could provide some, because he's a climate finance expert. So sorry, actually, for calling you out, but if you could help with the question.
Can you repeat the question, Mary?
What are some innovating financing that we could tap into?
All right, thank you very much, distinguished participants, Mary and the excellencies that have made interventions earlier on from the Bangkok hub. I am actually Taloiburi. I work with the Green Climate Fund based in Songdo in South Korea. Particularly in response to that question, as we know, climate finance is an obligation for developed countries, and that's under the context of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. The reality that we operate in right now is that we would need to mobilize financing from other alternative sources beyond just public finance. The role of private sector and private finance will be very critical, and also other alternative sources of funding that's available. And there are recent discussions on new and innovative options, including debt for climate swap, discussions within the IMO on carbon levy, discussions on nature for nature swaps, and others that's happening around the world. I think those are interesting areas of discussion that's currently being progressed at different levels and at different stages within our region and also at the global level, particularly for the Green Climate Fund. A lot of these innovative financing mechanisms are instruments that we are already providing support to. So the Green Climate Fund offers grants for readiness and also for project-related funding. We have a portfolio of over $2.5 billion that's invested specifically for water-related activities around the world. Some of them include investments in the Pacific. In addition to that, we also then provide other instruments that would catalyze and incentivize private sector investment in water and other infrastructure development around the world. That includes concessional loans, equity guarantee to de-risk the need for private sector to invest in these areas. There are also discussions on sources such as debt for climate swaps that's currently under discussion. And as you all know, with the leadership of the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, she has been championing the Bridgetown Initiative, which is looking at how to leverage on the SDRs and to assist developing countries that are vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. So I guess I'll stop there. It's an evolving area of work and discussion that's happening around the world. A number of governments and partners are taking leadership in these spaces. And my encouragement to us as a region in the Pacific and in Asia is to continue to support, provide input to those discussions. We need to leverage on different sources to meet the need. If we just focus our effort on a limited envelope of resources, then we may not be able to actually meet the real need that we have in developing countries in our region in Asia and the Pacific.
Sorry, can I just jump in as well? My name is Chris Sirre and I work at the World Bank. My former hat was with the Global Environment Facility. I mean, the older, more poorer sister of the Green Climate Fund. But within that office also manages other funds, among others, the Adaptation Fund. And I know for a fact that a lot of Pacific Islands have not utilized their Adaptation Fund allocations. And especially when we talk about water wash within the climate resilience pathways here, that is a very good sales point. And I really encourage you to take a look at that. Talk to your focal points in your countries to see if you have utilized adaptation fund money that's there. There are also smaller climate funds sitting within the GF that are targeting some resilience and adaptation specifically. So I mean, take a look at this. These are money sitting waiting to be used, and I really encourage you to do that. On top of that, of course, the Global Environment Facility is also a grant-making organization that will support some of these things, not water and wash specifically, but if it's within a climate resilience angle, there are opportunities there. So, I mean, I'll put back my World Bank hat, but I just wanted to make a little pitch. Thanks.
Now we'll hand over to Bangkok. Nien, if there's any question for this.
Sure, thank you, Super. So right now, I'd like to open the floors for questions to the in-person participants here in Bangkok.
Thank you very much for your extremely erudite and highly meaningful address on the opportunities and challenges that this entire region faces in building a climate resilient wash, especially for the large sections that continue to be the millions that continue to be excluded. I'm just wondering whether, it's been our experience as part of the consortiums of Water for Women Fund, the partners, the kind of experience we have developed and the kind of insights we have developed when we have, placed women and marginalized communities at the center, not as the face of the problem, but as, shall we say, the drivers of solutions. I'm wondering whether we could elaborate a bit on that, because I think this is one silver lining in the entire region, the kind of, shall we say, the push on the sort of the pressure that women are, placing across the region in resolving some of these highly sort of, essential survival development issues, and in the context of, climate change and all the challenges it's posing. So I'd be very happy if, a little more sort of, for us, what we call, policy framework is shared with us on what we could do to take, build on this advantage that we have developed over the last 7 years, thanks to the Water for Women Fund and the support from the Australian government.
Over to Mary.
Okay. Thank you for the very important question, because water disproportionately impact women, as you mentioned. And one of the things that we've done is to really look at coming up with a gender flagship program. I'm talking about the Pacific community here, that looks into key priority areas and see how do we really integrate gender into the work we do. And there's also another piece of work looking into women in hydrology. So looking at the policy level, planning level, but also into the role of women as the key users of water at the community level. And if we look at the number of women in decision-making positions in the water sector, I think we have very few women. And if you look at the technical element areas like hydrology, there's very limited women in hydrology. And we actually have a hydrology roadmap that is being developed for the Pacific that will also look into how do we increase women in technical positions. So I would like to ask my colleague, Jakey. Sorry, okay, we have to get moving, but can she just share one, yeah, sorry, Jackie, because when we look at the STEM field, there are very little women involved in it. So hydrology is not well understood. So I just want Jackie to share a little bit on hydrology roadmap for the Pacific that we're developing and how women are being really integrated into it.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, so as Mary said, it's been identified, I guess, in the work we do in flooding and hydrology. There's a gender aspect from, as you said, as like the, I guess, experiencing the disasters and being particularly vulnerable. But also we've found from the technical side of things, there's, as Mary said, not many women working in the industry, and that's gone backwards. So we did a survey in 2019, and it's, I think it was about 20% participation of women in technical roles and professional roles, and that's gone down to about 10% in the last 5 years. So we're looking at ways to support countries and national hydrological services to reverse that trend, because apart from missing out on 50% of the population and all the ideas that and benefits that women bring from working in technical roles, there's also, since we're short on time, probably won't go into it, but there's a lot of benefits that women can bring by increasing their space in those technical roles, but also in the decision-making processes that go around that. So, there's this focus on the measurement and monitoring of water and the analysis and assessment. So that's some of the work that we're doing at SPC.
Thank you, Jake. I think we've run out of time.
Okay, thank you, Mary, for the answers, and also the other colleagues for the questions and the compliments. So with that, I'd like to request Her Excellency Retno Marsudi to respond to that question. Over to you, Her Excellency.
Well, actually, not exactly to respond the question, but let me start by giving a little bit more perspective on the issue of financing. I want to start with the question whether all of us, including all the government, already put water as on the high political agenda. I think we have to work hard to put water on the high political agenda. Why I have to address that? Because if we don't put water at the center, then the question of financing won't be there. So that's why one of my mandate is on the advisory to all the leaders to put water and their high political agenda, as well as to talk with people, to educate people about all related with water. As colleague from Green Climate Fund mentioned that the climate fund is not sufficient yet, plus now we are facing, I'm just talking about the fact that most countries could not fulfill their ODA. That is the fact. So we have to find other ways, innovative ways, how to strengthen the financing issue on water. So that's why the UN conference on water in 2026, I assume and I'm sure, will also discuss about the financing issues on water. And we would like to encourage also to explore how best the private sector and the government can work together when it comes to financing issue. And then the second point is about water and women. And I would like to start giving a very simple example on how important we address the issue of water. In this case, is water scarcity, water management, and women. In some part of countries where they encounter water stress, water scarcity, from household to water resources, they have to walk more than 30 minutes to get water. And you know, who are those who have to fetch water? Most of them are women. So women has to fetch water from their household to the water resources, and they have to walk around 30 minutes, 1 hour. The question is, what happened with those women in between their household and the water resources? Many things can happen to those women. So small projects, and I think the government of Australia does it, to bring the water resources close to the household. If we can do that, again, this is a very simple example. If we can do that, means that we can solve two things. Number one, access to safe drinking water. Number two is to protect women. And some of the activities of the projects, we cooperate with the women organization, how to manage water. And I think that kind of simple projects that we should multiply in as many countries as possible. I mean, we are facing this kind of situation in many countries in the world. And let us start with a simple example, but give impact directly to the people and to the women. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Her Excellency, for the comprehensive insights. And also thank you, Mary, for the very comprehensive presentation. Yeah, thank you, Suvar. So now we have the pleasure to watch 2 more videos prepared by the Australian government's What If Women program. Over the last 2 years, What If Women partners have been working alongside communities throughout Asia and the Pacific to document insights on climate resilience, inclusive water, sanitation, and hygiene. A dedicated learning activity brought together the experiences and reflections of diverse partners to explore the question, what does climate resilient, inclusive wash look like? Along with some learning documents, What If Women developed 2 animations to help summarize this new knowledge.
Everything starts with water. Health, food, nature, and peace. Water is the thread that connects us. But climate change is unraveling it all. Floods, droughts, rising sea levels. Almost all climate disasters are water-related. Human activity has disrupted the world's water cycles, and marginalised communities experience the impacts first and worst. These dangers are amplified for the millions without access to water, sanitation, and hygiene, WASH. And within these communities, some are more at risk than others. They are at the fraying edges as climate change unravels their basic needs. But people on the front lines of climate change have invaluable lessons to share. They're not waiting for heads of state to act. They are taking action now. They know what it takes to be resilient and reduce their risks from disasters. Yet their knowledge is the stitch often skipped and their voices unheard. But in this global crisis, knowledge is a blanket we must weave together. Each thread helps create solutions that make us stronger and more secure. So we're inviting these communities into the conversation to explore climate resilient, inclusive WASH together. By bringing together voices from 16 countries across Asia and the Pacific, we're combining lived experience with scientific insight to co-create a sustainable future for all. We're committed to ensuring that every voice is heard and to closing the sanitation gap. Because WASH is vital for the health of our communities and our planet. By weaving diverse, inclusive solutions, we can craft a resilient future for everyone, stitch by stitch, thread by thread. Resilience is a lifeline. It catches us when we fall. It helps us cope, adapt, and grow. But resilience can be depleted. Climate change is here, disrupting our lives and the systems we rely on, deepening risks where inequality already exists, and pushing those left behind even further. But these people are not powerless. They have the vital knowledge and experience we all need for a resilient future. On our journey across Asia and the Pacific, we've learnt that WASH and climate resilience go hand in hand. Water, sanitation, and hygiene protect against disease and hunger, and support health, education, and livelihoods. Strong WASH systems help people prepare and respond, adapt and thrive. And resilient people make WASH systems stronger. Climate resilient, inclusive WASH strengthens communities through equitable and sustainable services, underpinned by robust and adaptable systems. It thrives on partnerships, uniting governments, organisations and diverse communities and links WASH with other sectors like health, education, and the environment. And it's proactive, not reactive, anticipating change, reducing risk, and transforming communities. It tackles the inequalities made worse by climate change and amplifies the voices of women, Indigenous peoples, and other marginalised groups, putting their knowledge, needs, and voices at the centre and ensuring everyone has a chance to prepare, respond, and recover. Because inclusion is at the heart of climate resilience. The truth is, we are more resilient together than alone. And together, we can create healthy, equitable, and climate resilient communities where everyone has access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene. This is our lifeline.
Thank you for that video, Australian government. Now I would like to thank you for everyone for joining this first plenary session. We are now going to sign off from the Bangkok Hub. We wish you a very productive and interesting day.
Thank you and goodbye, Silver. Enjoy your poster exhibition. Bye-bye.